Okay, so I want to talk about the new Suco TLC a bit because I think there are a few problems that come with it. I think the TLC itself is pretty good, you know. I like that Suco got new abilities. I think there are a few pretty obvious problems here which I want to discuss and which I hope will get fixed in the future. And you know, Suco is kind of important to me because I used to really like to play it, you know, it used to be my favorite playable in the game basically. But now it's kind of in a state where I don't really want to play it anymore because there are some issues with it, which I think those issues can be fixed very easily. But yeah, just gonna talk about my thoughts, my suggestions. From the perspective of someone who played Suko a lot, who really cares about the playable in particular. So yeah, I hope you enjoy. So my main problem here is that Suko got like these two abilities, right? So now instead of the standard bite, you also have this one, Riptide, which is like, or which has its full power when you are wet and when your enemy is wet. And you also have the Claw Barrage, which is also buffed when you are wet or your enemy is wet. So in addition to that, you have the Water Spout, which makes all creatures around you wet for free. So you have, what this means is you have a constantly available option to just make everyone and yourself wet, and you will have like 100% uptime on these buffs, right? Like this ability, they will always have the full damage, and you can just force that no matter what. You don't need weather for it. You can do it wherever and whenever you want, right? But now, when you look at the normal bite and the normal claw attack, what they do is basically they do good damage by itself. However, when you go and look at the standard bite now and the normal claw attack, you realize that these attacks, they don't really become viable once you are wet or once your enemy is wet, because then you're just actively running the worst option, right? And this wouldn't necessarily be a problem if there was a way for you to forcefully make everyone dry, right? Like you make everyone wet with this ability. So the problem here is when it's raining, or when your enemy has this ability, for example, which makes everyone wet, then your abilities will become useless, and there's nothing you can do about it. Your build is destroyed and you will be killed because you can't defend yourself properly anymore. Because with these abilities you rely on being dry, but you can't forcefully activate these buffs. So these abilities become extremely weak compared to the other abilities. Which is kind of the biggest problem here, right? Because you have no power over when it rains, but you do have power over this ability, which makes everyone wet and gives you all the buffs that you need in order to run the other abilities. So basically, if you want to be consistent and don't have to worry about the weather, or if your enemy goes in water or not, if you want to be consistent, you can only run these options, right? You can't use these because you will just randomly be nerfed when it's raining, or when your enemy has an ability like this, which makes everyone in the area wet. I think that's where the biggest problem is. Like, I think the easiest solution to this would be to like make the normal bite be at full damage no matter the conditions. Just have it always do the same damage. If you're wet or if you're dry, or if your enemy is dry or wet, just always have it do the damage that it does when all these conditions are met, basically, right? And always have the same thing for this ability too. So you can use these at all times, and you can also use these at all times because you can forcefully activate these buffs on these abilities. So I don't really get it. Like, you can make a build for... You can make, like, give us the ability to make a basic build, which doesn't require anything, and then give us the ability to make a water-based build, which requires you to at least buff yourself, right? Which requires you to run this, and buff yourself, and then you got these attacks and they are strong and they are cool, right? Why don't you give us the ability to use these attacks instead with just no conditions? Or what? Another solution to this could be, I don't know, you give us a hide option, which basically makes you be dry at all times. Like, you can't run any of these options, but you have a fourth option which just keeps your Sucho dry at all times, so you can use these abilities even when you would be wet by rain or in water, but you don't get wet yourself. And also remove the, like, condition that you that your enemy needs to be dry for this. And I think that would be fair. So you would have, like, one dry option which is always reliable, and one wet option which is always reliable. But don't have it be like this, you know, just make one playstyle reliable and make the other playstyle shit. I don't really get that. Yeah, I don't know. Like, it would be fair, you know? You can have your water build with your water hide, so you're good in water. And you can also use it on land, because you have this ability which always buffs you on land, right? And you could also be a dry build, which always keeps you dry and removes the debuffs of these attacks so that you can use them in water, or if your enemy is wet, or if it's raining, whenever you want, basically. And for that you would just have to let go of one of these hide options. I think that would be a fair compromise, you know? So anyways, in case anyone watched this, thank you and have a nice day.